Danny Wolf might just be the next Nikola Jokic.
Said it, I'm golden. Told you I'm shining. Had to break through. Plan perfect timing. Giving no hands. Go get it. Radix the ruler. Can't with them peasants.
The Miami Heat picked 20th overall in the upcoming 2025 NBA draft. And so far in my draft series, I've discussed Liam McNeely, Rasheer Fleming, Noah Asenge, Will Riley, Nick Clifford, Walter Clayton Jr., Cedric Howard, Nolan Troy, Ben Slav, Jace Richardson, Carter Bryant, Thomas Sorber, and now Danny Wolf, which of course has been a long-awaited video because many people requested that I talk about him. So shout out to everybody that you see behind me here, and make sure to drop some of your comments below on who you want to see me talk about next. Now, the reason it took me so long to get this Danny Wolf video out is because truthfully, he's kind of been my favorite prospect for a while now. So I wanted to look into some other guys first just to see if there was anybody that I could possibly like more than Danny Wolf. But before we get into that, if you're one of the 56.6% of people that's not subscribed yet, make sure to hit that button for me, because today when I was hooping, I caught an elbow when a guy was doing a Euro step, hence the nasty gash on my lip. So I feel like I deserve a subscription for the Heat culture defensive intensity, baby. But now let's get back into the video. I will admit, though, that my fandom for him really just started because I saw a random highlight tape several months ago, and he was doing all kinds of crazy crosses and step backs and passes and threes and literally everything while being in a massive 7-foot frame. And I couldn't help but think to myself, my God, this kid is special. And also, how the hell was he projected to be a late first-round pick? So I knew that there had to be some sort of weakness that the highlights were not portraying, which is obviously the case with everybody. But I wondered, could his weaknesses be that bad that they overshadow all the incredible things that he does offensively with his size? Well, of course, that's something that we're going to discuss as we continue to progress through this video. I want to start by talking about his measurables from the official NBA Combine, where he came in at 6'10 and a half without shoes. So he's probably about 7 foot with shoes, which is what he was listed in college. He does have a 7'2 wingspan, so slightly positive, but not quite as long as a lot of other guys like Thomas Sorber, who we talked about last video, and Rasheer Fleming. He did come in at 251 pounds. So he is big, but not as big as I thought. I mean, even Thomas Sorber, who we just talked about, was about an inch shorter. He was 6'9", but he did have a 7'6 wingspan and weighed about 10 pounds more. So Sorber is a lot bigger. We're going to compare these two guys throughout the rest of this video because I think those are my two favorite big men prospects in this draft, and I think the Heat certainly do have a glaring need for backup center. Danny Wolf is only 21 years old. He played 2 seasons at Yale before playing his junior season at Michigan, which of course is a very big historic basketball program right now. You got Duncan Robinson from there, and there's been numerous guys to come out of that program for many years. We get Michigan is good. But as far as Yale, that was an interesting one because obviously not many guys have come from an Ivy League school to make the NBA in general. There's only been a handful of guys. Really, the only notable one is Jeremy Lin. Of course, we all know he went to Harvard. But Yale specifically, I looked it up. There was only ever 4 people to come out of Yale, with the best player probably being Chris Dudley, who wasn't great, but he had a long NBA career, and he was most known for getting absolutely posterized by Shaq and then shoved to the ground, which is hilarious. But we'll look at Danny Wolf's junior season at Michigan, where he played in 37 games, started them all, played about 30 minutes a night, and in those minutes, he averaged 13 points per game, almost 10 rebounds, about 4 assists, while shooting 49 to 50% from the field and about 34% from 3. That's on 3 attempts. So the numbers don't really jump out at you. Obviously, the points aren't super glaring. You like to see that he did a good job crashing the glass, using his size to get those rebounds. The Heat, of course, definitely need that. But when you watch the highlights, you look at it, you would think that he's an excellent shooter and a guy that could be a really great facilitator. But it's like you shot 34% from 3. That's not all that great. His free throw percentage was 59%. You're talking about a sub 60 free throw percentage. That's not good. Usually that's a sign that a guy's not going to be a great shooter in the league either. I don't feel like his mechanics are bad, but they're certainly slow. And then when it comes to the facilitating, yeah, he averaged about 4 assists, which is great for his position. but he also averaged slightly over 3 turnovers. So the assist to turnover ratio really wasn't that great either. So I guess that's why a lot of these major publications were undecided on where to have him mocked, because you did have someone like CBS. They had him at number 15, right outside the lottery. But then NBA Draft.net had him at 27. Bleacher Report had him at number 28. But then The Ringer had him at the end of the lottery at number 14. And then Yahoo Sports had him going in the second round at number 35. I definitely think that's the biggest disparity among any of the prospects that we looked at so far. And then Tankathon also had him going at number 23. So a few of these publications did have him going around the Heat's range, which is why I do think he's an interesting prospect to consider. As far as the player comps, some of the ones that I've seen are Mo Wagner, who I don't really get that comparison just because they're two tall, white, big men. And also Mo Wagner went to Michigan. I think that was the main reason for that comparison there. I mean, both guys hustle hard, but I don't think Mo Wagner's really a primary ball handler. He's a good player, though. Nice energy guy. The two comparisons that I saw after that were two Miami Heat legends, maybe infamous legends, depends how you feel about them. The first one I saw was Nemanja Bjelica, who all Heat fans can agree, which Heat fans can't agree on anything, but we can agree that Bjelica sucks. So if Danny Wolf is anything like him, that's not a good thing, but I don't love those comparisons either. Bjelica could shoot, but he couldn't really put the ball on the floor too well. The other guy that I see him compared to a lot, and we're going to do a lot of those comparisons this video, is Kelly Olynyk, who I think Heat fans are split how they feel about him. A lot of them love Kelly Olynyk. I'm in the camp that really didn't. I think he was a great person. I think he had some really good games here and there, but it really frustrated the hell out of me how he shot some wild three-pointers without setting his feet. He was too slow to close out on defense. And unfortunately, I think a lot of those things compare to Danny Wolf, but we'll continue to talk about those two as we get through the video. The last player comp that I saw, which I think might be Danny Wolf's ceiling, which would be amazing, because it was Hedo Turkoglu, who was a very, very good scorer in this league for a long time. I'm not sure Danny Wolf can ever be the shooter that Turkoglu turned into, but he was a very versatile player, could pass the ball, efficient guy. If that is Danny Wolf's ceiling, then that would be a home run at number 20 if he could achieve that. Now let's get into Wolf's strengths and weaknesses. We're going to read the ones that Kevin O'Connor had in his Yahoo article, but I'll share my thoughts as well based off my independent research. The first strength that he had listed was shot creation, and the exact excerpt that he wrote said, "Funky ball handler with a knack for making highlight passes who showcases unique ball handling and passing ability for a big man." It's that last 4 words that really make me hesitant about Danny Wolf, where he says, for a big man. Because, yeah, when you're watching his highlights, it's cool, it's fun to watch and everything like that, but they're good for a big man. I'm not really sure his handle's elite. You don't really see him blow past his defenders, and in college, all of that stuff is cool because you don't need to be super quick. Your size can be enough to allow you to operate and dribble the ball and do all these funky things, as Kevin O'Connor says. But in the league, you're almost always playing against a guy who's 7 foot. So it's like if you're not quick enough and don't have a tight enough handle for anybody, not just for a big man, then a lot of times that ball handling stuff is kind of worthless. And when I think of a funky ball handler, kind of reminds me of Kelly Olynyk. That's kind of how I would describe him. Kevin O'Connor also notes some of the facilitating chops that Danny Wolf has when he says he's comfortable bringing the ball up or operating from the perimeter, especially running pick and roll or facing up and driving to the rim. If his shot translates, he could offer great value slashing. I think a lot of these things are true. I do think Danny Wolf can be a nice facilitator as far as a connective piece. You know, he won't be your main guy moving the ball, but if you're able to get him in a pick and roll from big to guard, I think that could provide an interesting dynamic for this Heat offense. Of course, most teams run pick and roll guard to big man, but we have seen the Heat do the opposite. Bam Adebayo is a great passer. We know Nikola Jovic is. Even Khalil Ware made some really nice reads this season. And if you're able to bring in another big who can run the pick and roll, it really just throws the defenses off because now anybody can do anything. You can have your guards like Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero run the pick and roll, or you could have your big men do it. And I do think that that part is interesting. Just don't expect Danny Wolf to be your primary facilitator. And then the rest of the strengths that Kevin O'Connor lists is just his effort. He tries hard on the defensive end. He tries hard when crashing the glass. And I do think that those things are very, very important, because although he's a slower-footed big man, at least he does try very hard, and that's why he's able to gobble up a lot of rebounds, which obviously the Heat needs someone that can do that. Moving on to the weaknesses, they do have shooting listed as his first one, which is a concern because when you watch the highlights, you would think that's one of his strengths. But again, as Kevin O'Connor notes, he only made 33.6% of his three-pointers over the course of his entire college career, and also 64% of his free throws. That doesn't necessarily trend well when you're talking about going to the next level. Kevin O'Connor says that he might just be a guy who shoots a lot and doesn't make a lot. I hate to say it, that kind of reminds me of Kelly Olynyk too, who, when you think about Kelly, you may say, hey, he was a great shooter in this league. I think that might be a lot of revisionist history, because if you go back and look at his numbers, he was very, very inconsistent. Had several seasons where he shot over 40% or close to 40%, and then had a lot of seasons where he shot 35 to sub 35%. So he's a very inconsistent shooter. I think his shot selection was a bit wild, and I think a lot of that can be said about Danny Wolf too, who likes to take a lot of these difficult step backs and crossover dribbles and all other stuff that makes for a great highlight, just not great when it comes to making winning, impactful plays. The next weakness they have listed is his athleticism. It says that Wolf struggles with his lateral quickness, which of course makes him vulnerable when guarding in space. He's not an explosive rim protector. Even on offense, he rarely dunks the ball. That's something that I noticed. He does all these nice layups, which he has a nice touch on a lot of the layups. But if you're 7 feet tall and you get a mismatch on you, I want to see you punish the defender. Go up there and dunk the ball. It would be nice to have another rim deterrent, but in this Heat system, I could say it's not necessary. You got Khalil Ware, so I do think Ware and Wolf could kind of provide that nice 1-2 punch. But yeah, he's not going to be the most athletic guy out there, which for the 20th pick in the draft, you're going to have some flaws. So if Danny Wolf is that skilled offensively, but he's just not athletic, I'm cool with that. I just question whether he can still do all of these things in the NBA, where everybody's a lot more athletic. That's my biggest concern. And then the final weakness they have listed is his turnovers. Throws way too many careless passes. I know he'll try to force a lot of things. But once Danny Wolf gets to the NBA, he's not going to have the ball as much. He had a super high usage rate with Michigan. He's not going to have that in the NBA. So I do think his turnovers will be cut down quite a bit. As far as his fit on the Miami Heat, I'm uncertain. What I can say is that he's no longer my favorite prospect. Once I did a little bit of my deep dive, I can say for certainty that I definitely like Rasheer Fleming more. I like Cedric Howard more. If we're talking about big men still, I like Thomas Sorber more, I think. I mean, Thomas Sorber is not super athletic either, but he is an elite interior defender, and he's also very skilled offensively. So I think he just might be a better two-way player than Danny Wolf. I think Wolf might be better for the modern NBA, which is a check mark in Higgs box, because he is a better shooter than Sorber, who shot like 16% from three. So, we said Danny Wolf has shooting concerns. He was still much better than Thomas Sorber, although I do think Sorber has some shooting potential. But right now, as a rookie, Danny Wolf would be the better shooter. He can operate on the perimeter a little bit more, probably be a little bit better off ball since he can shoot, where Thomas Sorber is a guy who likes to get a lot of post touches. And if he was on the Miami Heat, he wouldn't get those post touches. Like, we know that. And he wasn't a super great pick and roll finisher. So I'm concerned how well Sorber could be as an off-ball player, where I think Danny Wolf could be better at that. But they still both have high offensive upside because they are skilled, just in different ways. Because Thomas Sorber has excellent footwork. Like, he's very, very good at that. And if not for his foot injury, he could be a guy that we're also talking about as a potential lottery pick. Just like with Danny Wolf, we are. A couple publications had him pretty close to the lottery. So I think those two are pretty close, in terms of if I would like them on the Miami Heat. But I do have some more hesitancies than I did when I first started looking into Wolf, because the more of his film that I watch, the more I see Kelly Olynyk. I'm sorry, I hate to rag on Kelly Olynyk. He's had a very long career, over 13 years, definitely nothing to sneeze at, but he was the 13th pick in the draft. So for a lottery pick, I don't think he quite lived up to that potential. But it's hard to compare those two because in college, Olynyk played 3 seasons but didn't play a lot his first 2 years. Then his junior year, he really exploded at Gonzaga, but he shot like 40% from 3 on less volume than Danny Wolf, who shot a worse percentage but on higher volume. So it's hard to compare the two. That being said, we're not talking about picking Danny Wolf at 13. We're talking about picking him at number 20. And if you can get a guy with that kind of offensive potential at number 20, then that's definitely something that I'd be interested in. And he's not just a potential guy. I think he could play right now in a lot of those backup center minutes. And I think his versatility would allow him to play with any lineup, which I think is very important as well. Where if you had a guy like Thomas Sorber, you got spacing concerns. Maybe you don't want to play him next to Bam or Ware. It'd be a little bit iffy. But I do think Danny Wolf could play next to those guys very well. At Michigan, he played next to another 7'1" guy basically in the entire season. So Wolf played a lot of the 4. He played a lot of the 5. So he could be versatile on the Miami Heat. And he had a lot of great passes to their other center. I could see Wolf and Ware having a great connection the similar way Nikola Jovic and Ware have a great connection. So I mean, he could play a lot of the similar role that Nikola Jovic does. Maybe he'd be some Jovic insurance if we were to send him in a Kevin Durant trade or something like that. So I'm definitely interested in Danny Wolf. It's just I do have a lot of concerns on if his ceiling is as high as I initially thought. But let me know all y'all thoughts down in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear what y'all think. Make sure to like the video and subscribe because I'm on the grind to hit 8,000 subs. That being said, I'll see y'all in the next video. So peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.